Are you a fan of upcycling? Do you have a soft spot for old fixer-uppers? Do you exude big kaiju energy and also yeehaw vibes? If so, shift those giant gears to park. We're taking 5 minutes to talk about the Walker Militia. I'm Family Man, and this is World Collider. The Walker Militia are massive, elite, value-farming mech suits piloted by a loose coalition of craftsmen and tradespeople, all banding together to fight against the waves of intruders that spill out of the rift. Just like their units, the militia's lore packs maximal punch in a minimal space. They're rednecks and giant mechs. What's not to love? These good old boys aren't the ones out in fancy transdimensional space looking to start fights. They're blue-collar, workaday Joes who happen to do kaiju fighting on the weekend. Where'd the mechs come from? World War III, but that's not important right now. Let's take a look at the Macchi chart to see what these walkers are all about. This is actually a Macchi chart about a Macchi faction. The user, Venator Macchi, who creates these lovely radars for the Collider, also created the Walker Militia. Per Macchi's assessment, the Militia have a solid all-rounder base, with decent numbers in both shooting and melee, as well as a strong defense, but begin to show their limits in both offensive efficiency and mobility. To cover their gaps, and to set this faction apart from the many other elite options, the Militia have an incredible focus and flexibility, which we'll touch on later. Walkers have exclusively Knack 3 rolls on all of their attacks, with no way and really no need to drop down to a Knack 2. Additionally, the Walkers have a fair amount of multi-attack weapons, averaging 4.5 attacks per unit, but again with no consistent way to increase damage per attack, they're stuck with their out-of-the-box numbers. That said, the average DPR for a Walker unit is 21, so I think they'll be just fine. For defensive stats, the Walkers give you pretty much what you'd expect out of a massive mech. Most units feature between 20 and 40 hit points, and everything has 2 points of defense, all physical. The single defense type makes it somewhat easier to build rosters that hard counter the walkers, but in any case, the enemy is in for an uphill battle. Many mechs feature regeneration and have access to multiple healing tactics, in addition to the faction-wide ejection seat ability. We're talking regen on regen on regen. But at price points where you can afford 2 or maybe 3 units per game, you'd better make sure these titanic tow trucks keep putting up numbers all the way into the later rounds. Among the most enticing units are the Jet Cutter mech, with its K3A1D13 ranged attack that can use its railgun jet ability to catch multiple units in a single roll, and my personal favorite, the Hog Hunting mech, with a K3A8D3 that can feed hit and run to scoot you across the board mid-shoot. The faction's top end includes a few 200-point options, but just keep in mind you'll only be able to afford one of them in most common formats, so choose wisely if you do. So alright. They're pretty strong and they're pretty tough, but what makes the walkers good enough? Their crop yield, by which I mean their value farming. Let's take a quick break to talk about the standard IWC format. If Worlds Collide is first and foremost a skirmish game, where players usually bring between 5 and 15 models for a 300 or 400 point game. Games are usually won by controlling points of interest, and rarely you can achieve victory by outright tabling your opponent. Both paths to victory become much harder for elite factions, who lack the bodies to both hold points and hunt down units in the later rounds. Some scenarios do give elite armies an out, such as First Contact, where you can destroy points of interest, or Last Chance, which features only a single King of the Hill type point, but each of these strategies requires generating a glut of AP, which is challenging to do in general. So then how do you remain competitive as an elite faction? Some factions force the enemy to come to them, but if you're the Walker Militia, you flex your way into taking 3 or 4 turns worth of actions in a single activation. Every unit is bursting at the seams with abilities that either grant you additional movement, drop an offensive token, or widen the reach of your powerful attacks so you can pick off multiple models with a single roll. Just like most Americans, every militia mech is holding down multiple jobs while out on the battlefield, every damn round. Let's take another look at the Hog Hunter. If you land just 3 of the 8 attempts at hit and run, something you will probably do, you'll be able to scoot up an additional 12 steps, covering a full 20 steps in a round and taking you deep into the enemy territory. Conversely, the Heavy Mining mech features 2 weapon profiles, 1 near and 1 melee, a grenade, a teleport option, and 7 steps of movement, essentially allowing it to fight on 2 fronts. Say what you will about the price point, but the walkers give you your money's worth. Just make sure you can find work for your mechs in every activation, otherwise you'll be quickly outpaced and outflanked by factions that can take more turns than you. If you find yourself starved for AP mid-game, just hang on to your mechanical horses. The walkers' tactics and environs have you covered. Without access to the leadership ability, you'll want to hammer on harebrained scheme as much as you can, but remember to play it safe if the environmental penalty poses a real threat. Losing even a single unit for a round can and will shut you down. Otherwise, many of the Militia's environmental effects offer small minigames you can play to rack up bonus AP in the next round. Just remember not to pull yourself in too many directions. The mechs can do a lot, but they can't do it all. Work hard and put in your 9 to 5 and you'll be bringing home the bacon. But knock off early and you'll find yourself out of time and out of luck. Think I'm right? Think I'm wrong? Head on over to the If Worlds Collide Discord and decide for yourself. Links to the IWC Discord and the Walker Militia faction page are all below. I'm Family Man, and I'll see you next time Worlds Collide.